phrase. 1 in 4 of you are going to die needlessly. And that is an unfortunate but powerful truth. It's very easy for that to sound like a statistic that doesn't really apply to you. But look around the 3 people sat next to you, that 4th person might well be you. There's good news. It's not even quite 12 o'clock, so I feel I should balance it off. There are innovators attacking every corner of the healthcare landscape who fundamentally believe that the pain and the suffering and the sadness and frankly the downright inconvenience of being sick isn't something that we ought to be necessarily tolerating in 2017 in the way that we have to. Put simply for the Trekkie fans out there, they are trying to make sure that we are able to live long and prosper. My name's Hamish. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Thriva. You can find us at thriva.co. And put as simply as I know how, Thriva is trying to build the world's first preventative healthcare service. And the way that we do that today is we use these things, finger prick home blood testing kits, and we have given thousands of people control back of their future. If you think about what it means for the people who use us, they have gone from a position of knowing actually very little about what happens inside their bodies on a regular basis to getting a regular insight to what's happening inside themselves, and ultimately to understand their risks and to manage and maintain their well-being. You're all probably sitting there thinking, hang about, we've got a healthcare system in the UK, we've got the NHS, and before I go any further, I want to make it very, very plain that I, and we as a company, are very pro the NHS. But to understand where Thriva exists within this ecosystem, you have to understand a concept called sick care, interchangeable with serious care. So the easiest way that I can explain it is don't try very hard to unpack this, just accept it at face value. Sick care is when you get sick, you are able to get treated by someone who is expert enough to be able to give you the treatment that you require at that time. Think about what that probably means for most people. It means that you're able to go into a GP surgery or into a hospital and get the service and care that you require. But just pause for a moment and recognize that sick care fundamentally is only able to deliver you care at the point at which you're already sick. And if the only thing that you take away from what Thriva is ultimately trying to create, it's about stopping people from getting to or keeping people out of the sick care system. It is fantastic at delivering sick care. However, as a consequence of being so good at delivering sick care, it is nigh on incapable of delivering preventative health care, which is maybe not surprising, therefore, that the #1 priority of the CEO of the NHS is preventative health. So let's just try and think about what that might mean for someone who, for reasons known to themselves, has decided to take their health seriously and they want to understand something more meaningful about their bodies. They're not just going to wait until they get sick. They're going to take the bull by the horns. So what does that experience look like for them today? So best case scenario looks a bit like this. You know, super helpful receptionist. I'm going to take some time off work and persuade my boss that this is a good idea. And I'm going to be able to get in, persuade the GP that I want the tests and they're going to do them for me, no problem, and give me the information. That doesn't happen, right? The reality is that the thing that's probably in your head is a thing that looks or feels a little bit more like this. You're going to have to make a phone call. You remember how to make phone calls, right? You're going to have to wait 2 weeks. You're going to have to go and spend time in a surgery that is designed for sick people. It's very good at delivering that care. But ultimately, in your head, you have to tolerate all this friction to be able to get to the thing that you're ultimately looking for. And what that means is people just don't do it, right? There's no point sitting here pretending that just because it's there and in theory they can do the kind of testing, that they're therefore going to do it, because they don't. So we don't have a culture in this country of people doing that. It doesn't happen. And if you manage to get all the way through that process, you get your 7 minutes with the GP. And the question that they will ask you first, quite rightly, is what's wrong with you? And if you come back from that one statement alone, you can understand the problem that we're trying to address. We're trying to keep people out of that environment. So, just to put a pause on it for a minute, that's the backdrop. However, we are sitting on the most phenomenal secular trend in health. The common kernel that sits at the heart of all of the innovation is fundamentally about giving people control back, solving for an increasing amount of curiosity that they have to understand, to have agency over their bodies, their health, their future. The introduction of the weighing scales alone, and this is going back certainly before they were connected to your phone, had a material impact, positive impact on people's health. To use the phrase, you can't improve what you can't measure. And people like Withings Nokia have gotten to the point now where you can very easily get rapid insight into how your body weight is changing over time. Go back 10 years, tracking, counting, understanding your external behavior, if you like, was very new. It was something only really done by the quantified self-enthusiasts. And the $2 billion in revenue that Fitbit did in 2016 and the 20 to 30 million active users that they have tells you something about what's happening there. It's becoming very mainstream. Even within sick care, innovators are disrupting the norm. You no longer have to sit and wait for an appointment at the GP. You can now pick up your telephone and get in front of a GP within about 5 to 10 minutes. I guess to round out the point, for a long time, the quantified self community, the people who monitored, who managed, who tracked, who harvested all the data that they could about themselves in a bid to be healthier, live longer, were sort of led by this guy. And Tim Ferriss, for a number of years, kind of existed in this microcosm. He now has 100 million downloads of his podcast to his name. It's moved completely out of that little niche and more broadly into the mainstream. Again, 10, 15 years ago, the idea that you could sequence your genome to understand what inherited risks or familial risks you might have was anathema. You can do it for 150 quid from home now, thanks to 23andMe. And finally, the products and services out there that are servicing people's needs, who are interested in essentially sort of hacking their way to a healthier body and healthier mind, are starting to themselves move into the mainstream. This is a nootropic, right? This is actually an alternative to coffee. And the point is, you can buy it from Amazon, and it will arrive to your house, like everything else from Amazon. And in the round, drawing all of those things together, it's about people demanding control and being able to get it for the first time, arguably, in the history of mankind. So, where do we go from here? Well, we take a really simple view on what the second bounce of the ball will be in this particular realm. And fundamentally, for us, it is about people wanting to understand what's actually happening inside their bodies. So if you like, there have been a huge amount of innovation, participants that have given us the ability to track what's happening on the outside of our bodies. Now, we believe people want to understand what's happening on the inside of their bodies. Just to zero in on actually how Thriva works for a moment. So we believe the world would be a better place if everyone was blissfully informed about their health. That's a super important concept for us. Because to get people to adopt this new way of being, where you have a regular insight into the health data that helps you understand your risks and improve your well-being, it has to be blissfully simple, right? So the way that it works practically online, you can buy one of 3 different packages from us. They contain, at the basic level, liver and cholesterol markers. At the more sophisticated end, everything from vitamin D to B12, things that, in essence, you will have heard of, and rightly so, all of which, really importantly, are key risk indicators and things that you can positively impact, principally with lifestyle and supplementation. If we see something serious, we'll obviously suggest that you go and see the GP, but principally, these are things that you can do something about tomorrow. The kit will be sent to you. It arrives, it's a little box, as per the picture earlier, and having gone through your letterbox, you do a little prick. It really is almost entirely painless. You collect about 10 droplets of blood, and you post it back to one of our partner laboratories. And usually within about 24 to 48 hours, you'll get a report delivered to your Thriva dashboard. It's been reviewed by one of our NHS-trained GPs, explaining what's going on in plain English. This is not about needing a degree in biochemistry to understand. But to make a point, if you think you've got problems when it comes to barriers to first use, you have to bleed into a tube to experience our aha moment. So our aha moment is when you get some results and you understand for the first time something that was previously completely blind to you about what's happening inside your body. But you do have to bleed into a tube. It is an inescapably rubbish part of our product. Right? Human beings are not prone to wanting to see their own blood. I mean, you are literally biologically pre-programmed for that to be seen as a bad thing, right? Unless you have some slightly strange perversions we won't go into. But even in that particular realm, there are innovators like these guys. So they've, in essence, created a mechanical leech, right? A company called 7S Bio, who we're talking to about potentially helping us get around that particular part of the program. You stick that little patch, it's about yay big, to your arm, press a button, and a vacuum, over the course of a minute or two, extracts a small volume of blood that you can stick in the post as is. And if you bake all of that down, right, if you bake down our product to its simplest form, what we're ultimately trying to give you is something analogous to this thing. So what's amazing, kind of hiding in plain sight in its brilliance, is that the dashboard in your car has reduced the anxiety, the stress, and ultimately the cost of owning a car, because it gives you a really good early indication of things that are going sideways that might need your attention, whether that's the oil pressure or a flat tire or even just the petrol running out. And that's what we're trying to build with Thriva. So Thriva is trying to become the dashboard for your body. These are actually my vitamin D results. I've been supplementing, so they've been going in the right direction. But the point is, I can now see really clearly what's happening in a way that I previously wasn't able to. So I just want to, I guess, just be very transparent about something that we totally fudged, because we learned a really powerful lesson, and I would be forever pleased if I could help anyone avoid doing the same thing. So rewind, sort of early part of last year, I just resigned from Travelex with a very young child and a very new wife to go and start Thriva. Not necessarily the best time to go and start a new business, but I did it because I believed powerfully that there was something important to be built here. And it was a total and utter mess of sort of manual fulfillment. We were packing the kits ourselves every day. We'd sling a post sack, not a particularly full post sack, of kits over our shoulders, take them up to the Old Street post office and stick them in the post box. And just before we'd kind of gone live, I'd had a barnstorming set to with Tom, one of my two co-founders and our CTO. They're always firmly about finding the right answer to the product. We actually get on very well. But the thing that we were debating was whether it should be a subscription product or not. And I won the argument. My argument was, it's new, it's hard, see point earlier about bleeding into a tube, and to put subscription as an extra barrier to adoption in front of people just doesn't make any sense when something like this is trying to come to market. Tom's view was the real value here is in helping people easily build up this longitudinal data set, because everyone in this room will have a unique data set to them, and it's about seeing their bespoke trends, hence making subscription part of the product is actually good for the customer. It's a preeminent solution. So I won. It wasn't a subscription product, and we got to about 300 customers, right? And I suddenly realized I had made the cardinal sin amongst product managers, and I was formerly a product manager, so I ought never to have made this, or seen this happen. I hadn't talked to our customers properly. So, tail between our legs, we spoke to about 80 of those 300 people, and we fundamentally learned two things. So we were using the jobs to be done framework. Fundamentally, that is about trying to understand the things that actually motivate people to bring you as a product into their lives to achieve a particular thing. And so we learned two things. One was that I was wrong, and people did want a regular check on their health, and we heard in various guises that we were bad people for making it difficult, and that we should make it easy. So in October of last year, after being live for 3 months, we launched subscription, and it's been the mainstay of our growth ever since. And the second thing we learned is that we had a job map that was broadly split in two. We had sort of two jobs being done. On the one hand, we had people who were kind of living for the now. They might have been down the pub a bit. They might have smoked a bit. Maybe had the occasional burger here and there. But they wanted to make sure that they weren't about to be blindsided by something. On the other hand, we had the naked bar chomping, salad eating, gym membership, sporting individuals. Only we didn't. Because it transpired, they were actually one and the same person. And just because there were these poles, actually there was huge bleed in the middle. It was actually principally a mashup in the middle rather than just these poles. Just because you have a gym membership doesn't mean that you don't also want to avoid getting clattered. Just because you eat a burger doesn't mean that you don't also occasionally eat a salad, right? Human beings are complicated, something that we struggle with daily. The truth that we landed on, and this is something that underpins all of our communication, all of our product thinking, is that the one thing that does drive a variance in behavior is whether or not you are principally motivated by that or that. Right? So you can be down the gym on a treadmill, look the same as the guy next to you, and one of you can be there because you want to look good. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just your truth. And one of you wants to be able to live a long, healthy, uninterrupted life. And the drivers for those are myriad, but that's the truth. Only we were wrong again. And it transpired that, yes, there is group one and group two, people who want to, on the one hand, live for now, and people who want to live forever. But there was a third group. And really rather embarrassingly, we just completely missed this. And that's people who want to just live normally. And those people, more often than not, are described as patients. And we'd sort of left this group of people in the sick care realm alone until we realized, and they came and told us this, which is how we realized, if you're a patient, doesn't mean you don't take Ubers and use Citymapper and use Slack at work. Doesn't mean that you don't expect all of the product privileges that you've become accustomed to in every other corner of your life. You're just trying to live a normal life. You just happen to be a patient. It doesn't define you. So it turns out these guys have a common need. They all need easy access to the information that they need so they can reduce their risk and maintain their well-being. So that's what Thriva is all about. This talk was entitled Sending Blood in the Post, and why you'll be doing it soon. And I really, really hope that you are doing it soon. Because I don't want anyone in this room to be that 1 in 4 statistic. I really don't. And we have the tools that can help avoid, as I say, much of that risk. So that code will give you 75% off any Thriva test. I thought about making it free. It's not free. Could have done. But the truth of the matter is that I want it to hurt, just a little bit. Because actually the value perception and value exchange is only really there if people are willing to invest a bit of their currency. So thank you very much for listening. If you do want to get in touch, you can grab me on hamish@thriva.co. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Hamish. Thank you. That was a great talk. Can I share a concern with you?
Sure.
So I think what stops me, or what might stop me from subscribing to a service like Thriva, is the worry about what happens to my data. I don't know why I'm worried about that, but I have a vague worry that my data is important and that I need to take care of it, and that by having my data, you might do something bad with it. How do you resolve the worries of people like me?
Yes, it's a really legitimate concern.
Oh, good, thank you.
I think the reality is that it comes down to something really simple. Yes, I could talk about the fact that we're trying to build a sense of trust and credibility in the way that we put product out and the way that we communicate to our current customers and our potential customers. But actually it comes down to a simple, fundamental truth in the way that we manage data, which is that we take the view it is your data. We happen to be the custodians of it, and we take that responsibility very seriously. We are actually three sort of fintech founders by background. So we understand that there is a very, very high degree of credibility needed to ultimately buy people's trust.
Because do insurance companies inquire about using your data?
No, not yet, because we're too small. Isn't to say that they won't. And actually, we're talking to insurance companies about doing this. And the reality is that there's going to be a pretty mixed bag of opinion out there. I think the majority of people that we've spoken to, both insurer side and consumer side, recognize that actually it's just a good thing. If you can move from not knowing anything about your health proactively to knowing quite a lot about it proactively and reducing your risk as a consequence, actually that's a competitive advantage for most insurers. They have some short-term concerns that it's going to drive up claims because people suddenly see stuff that perhaps they otherwise didn't. But net-net, that ought to be something that reduces the cost of providing those insurance policies.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again very much. Hamish, everyone.
Thanks very much. So my name's Hamish Grierson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Thriva. We have some unique challenges around designing a physical product that gets sent in the post. Namely that it actually has to fit through a letterbox and it has to contain all of the components that we need to be able to provide, I guess, the ability for people to collect a finger prick sample at home. But I'd say there are probably more opportunities than there are constraints, right? We have, unlike digital-only products, this amazing unboxing moment that we give to people. And we see that as a huge positive, fundamentally. We're still trying to do lots of work to improve it, obviously, but yeah, it's net a really good thing. So the biggest product lesson that we've learned at Thriva is ignore your customers at your peril. And I mentioned this in my talk. We had gotten to about 300 customers, and we hadn't done anywhere near enough research into what was driving them to use us. So we did a big jobs to be done exercise with them. But not doing that meant we were really at risk of going down a whole bunch of blind alleys unwittingly. So yeah, not talking to customers was something that we just should have gotten right. Absolutely astonishing, because I think, you know, we understood really clearly that there was this need. You know, people weren't getting easy access to this information, but equally we recognized that people did need to overcome this pretty unique moment in our customer journey. They had to bleed into a tube to experience the real value of what we deliver, and actually seeing someone go through that process was an amazing thing. Yeah, it was very special actually. So a really important assumption that we had to challenge based on that early customer feedback I mentioned was that having subscription in the product actually was something that people were looking for. My co-founder and I had a really heated debate, well actually all three of us had a really heated debate about whether we should include subscription given that it arguably creates a barrier to first use. And I got it wrong, they got it right, and we built subscription into the product. It's something that, you know, people can control to the nth degree, but yeah, it was something that we had to change our thinking on pretty quickly. So the way that we prioritize how we design new test packages or kits is fundamentally around customer insight on the one hand, and a pretty rigorous analysis of whether or not the test is going to be value additive to the people who are going to be taking it in the way that we think it ought to be. So the way we think it ought to be is that it's something that by using regularly, you can understand a set of risks that you don't otherwise get access to and therefore have the opportunity to improve, and that you can do meaningfully from home. So we're sort of always balancing off, you know, yes, is it something that people are going to want? Is it something that we can deliver that's valuable? And is it reasonable that people can be asked to do it at home? So the thing that I'm most excited about working on next is building an increasing degree of bespokeness into the way that we deliver the sort of post-initial result experience. And for us, that's about trying to be as preeminent a solution for our customers as possible. So when you've done a first test, we don't want that experience to end with you just seeing a set of results that we've surfaced. We want you to understand where to go from there. So maybe there's something that we've seen in the results, or that you've told us in your lifestyle information, that means some other type of test maybe, or a different type of service entirely. Maybe it's a non-smoking app, maybe it's a diabetes prevention or reduction tool. So for us, it's about creating greater value for the people who are using us by being able to better service their needs. And ultimately that's about, we think, being more bespoke. So I was really excited about speaking at Canvas because I come from a product management background myself. It's a fantastically ill-defined discipline. No one really can agree on what product management is. And I also think it's probably one of the most important disciplines that there is. And I massively champion and support anyone who's putting their back behind that community. So yeah, it was a great honour to come and talk here. Probably the Duolingo talk. You know, having 200 million users is something we aspire to. Yeah, be fascinated to hear how they've cracked it.